Alright guys, wrapping up this 2025 Denali HD dually. It's got the 4-inch cognito. Oh wait, my bad, wrong truck. Okay, so wait, this one's the one we're doing today. Okay, like I said, just wrapping up this 2025 Denali HD Ultimate. It's got the 4-inch cognito on it. This one came to us, I think this one's from out of Indiana. It's got the 4-inch cognito performance series. It's got the new 24-inch DDC mesh wheels. Went with the Nitto Ridge Grappler and a 315/50/24. That's going to be the equivalent of a 37 by 13. And as you can see, it turned out really nice. One thing that I really like about these DDC wheels is that you don't have to run a 10-lug adapter. They're a simulated 10-lug, both front and rear. Give you a little better look at that. So these are actually going to be simulated 10-lug spikes. The 8-lug spikes are going to reside behind the center, or the 8-lug lug nuts are going to reside behind the center cap here. And then you've actually got the shorter ones on the front, and then on the rear, same setup. You're going to have the simulated 10-lug spikes, but you see that they're longer. And then you got your 8-lug lug nuts that are going to be behind the center cap. This keeps you from having to have the additional adapters. And I'll kind of give you a comparison to that, because on this other truck that we're doing, it does have the 10-lug adapters. And as you can see what this looks like. Now, someone had previously installed these 10-lug adapters and they did it all wrong. As you can see, they didn't index the wheel properly, and they've kind of really ruined the lug nuts there. So whoever did that really didn't know exactly what they were doing. So back to this one. Another unique thing about this new DDC mesh 24-inch wheel, as you can see, it doesn't have the traditional convex where the wheel curves outward, as you can see there on the front wheel. Now the rear wheel is still going to be concaved. Give you another look at that. It's a little bit unique to the setup. As you can see, the spokes are going to curve inward. So normally on the dualies, the rear ones curve inward, the front ones curve outward. I'll show you on these. Again, these wheels and tires are already on this truck. We're just doing the lift on this one, on the one on the rack that we're still working on. But you can see how the front wheels curve outward. I've done this because you don't have to run that adapter, so there's no need in the wheel to have that curvature. That would just make the wheel set in further, and to keep it to where it still looks proportionate to the rear, it's more of a flat profile. It's not really flat, it's still got a little bit of curve, but in the sense of how much curve they normally have. It's kind of a cool look. It's definitely different. You let me know what you think about this in the comments. So what sets DDC wheels apart from the rest of the direct bolt options is that with DDC, obviously you don't have to have an adapter, but they also have enough offset in the wheel that you can run a 1250 tire without the rear tires touching each other. They've designed the 24-inch version to be able to accommodate a 13-inch wide tire without the rear tires touching each other, and also for the inner tire to not touch the rear leaf spring. Those are both big issues with direct bolt wheels, and you can still do that without having to run that adapter. I also really like how they've made the rear inner and outer wheels interlock, and that the lug nut goes all the way through both the inner and the outer wheels. Since dualies are really prone to vibration, anything that you can do to minimize that vibration is always a great thing. Now, since we normally do like a 37/12/50 and this one's a 37/13, we did have to do a little bit of extra trimming. You got your Kelderman caps here, a little bit of inner trimming on your inner liner through there, and then on the bottom of the bumper through here, and then your lower valence, along with your inner liner on the front side. So not too aggressive there, but still needed a little bit more trimming nonetheless. You're going to have your upper control arms with the performance kit, and you're going to have your Fox 2.0 Resi shocks as well. You're also going to get your Pitman and idler arm brace, and we typically like to add a steering stabilizer to the kit as well. Keep in mind, if you have the Pitman and idler arm brace, you do have to have a special bracket to drop that stabilizer down just a little bit so there's no interference between the two. So while we're talking about the lift, I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about Cognito. Haven't really seen a lot of people talking about this, but they were actually bought out back in June of 24 by Randy's Worldwide. If you're not familiar with Randy's, you're probably familiar with some of the other companies that they own. They own Carly Suspension, Yukon Gears, Icon Suspension. So they own some pretty big power hitters there. Typically, when a big player like that buys a company, it doesn't go great. But I've been pleasantly surprised since they bought Cognito. They've made a couple revisions already on these kits that I wanted to show you today that we've been asking for. I've also seen better stock. They're starting to come out with some new shocks and just some new products in general, more applications for more vehicles. So it looks like it's going to be a good thing. But let me show you some of the things that they've done so far with these kits. I'm going to try to get in here to show you these best I can. So on that upper control arm up there, you'll notice it does not have a boot. They call that their Alpha Series ball joint. I'll try my best to get you up in there. There's no boot. It's a patented bootless design, and it's greasable. From the top side, it looks exactly the same as the previous generation. But you can see there is no boot. All the grease is going to be contained in the housing itself, which is where you want your grease. It doesn't really matter how much you have in the boot. It doesn't serve a purpose. It's just for excess. So now having a greasable ball joint is a really big deal, because previously they were not greasable. So now they're greasable, and you don't have to worry about any boot tears or anything like that. They're sealed internally, and that's kind of a first. And like I said, that is patented by Cognito, so that's a really nice upgrade right off the bat. Okay, so this is the idler side of the Pitman and idler support, and as you can see, the Heim joint no longer has a jam nut on each side of the bracket. The Heim joint itself is the jam nut and then butts up to the bracket. This is going to make a much more error-proof installation, and you don't have to worry about it being installed wrong by your installer or having too much pressure or too much tension on your idler or Pitman arm. So that's also a very nice improvement. And as you can see with this Cognito kit, just like all the other ones, we've got extremely flat CV axle angles, tie rod, ball joints, everything's in a neutral position, which is why this kit is liked by so many. Those flat angles are going to give you a really good ride quality, and they're going to keep from having excessive wear on your suspension components. And it still gives you the amount of lift that you want to get this look. Without putting any of your suspension in a bind. As you can see, this truck just looks killer. I'll just take a moment to give you a walk around the truck. Go ahead and show you the rear suspension while I'm back here. That's just going to use a 2-inch rear block. You're going to have your bump stop extensions here, and then you get your Fox Resi 2.0 shocks. Now these are the non-adjustable. If you want the adjustable, you'll move up to the 2.5 series, and those are going to be the Elite Elka or the Elite King. They offer both versions. And you've also got your bumps or your brake line extension or your relocation bracket up there that you can barely see. Just a really good looking truck, and the vinyl wrap on these and that white looks really nice as well. Now, I've talked about this before, but I'll go ahead and briefly touch on it again. On these dualies, the rear fender gap, the distance between the top of the tire to the bottom of the fender on the front fender and the rear fender is different. You've got less fender gap in the rear than you do in the front because of the way the bed sides are made. We tend to set these with a 1 inch more fender gap in the front. That tends to look level. Now, if you put a level on the frame or on the bed rail, it's going to show that it's still slightly high in the rear, but to the eye it appears to be level. If you set it to where the level, it shows level, it's going to look like it's squatting. If you set it where the front fender gap and the rear fender gap match, it's going to look really rear high. So this is kind of a compromise between the two and gives you a visual. It visually looks level from most angles and is what most people end up liking. Of course, we can set it however you prefer, but this is how we normally do these newer dualies. Really great looking truck. Now, go ahead and show you the rear cross member. You can see the full skid plate system they have. You got your non-torsion drop bracket here, and then your bump stop relocation mount there as well. You can barely see the Fox Resi shocks there. Sometimes we will mount the Resi up here. Let's see if I can get the camera to focus there. Sometimes we'll mount the Resi up here on top of the shock mount. That's really just customer preference on where they want it. If they want it up here, we can use an additional bracket to move it up there. There's no performance advantage there. It looks cool with it being there, and some people like it. The way it comes from Cognito is just to be mounted onto the body like this. Now, with it being the non-torsion bracket, non-torsion drops kit, you can see it keeps the torsion bars within the factory frame rail there. All right, guys. I do believe that's going to cover pretty much everything on this one. If you have any questions, make sure you drop them in the comments. Remember, we do ship these kits nationwide, as we obviously install them as well. And make sure you like the video, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.